Welcome to Project Planning for Post-Harvest Efficiency, Profitability, and Food Safety. So far, we've looked at produce safety in general. We've looked at flow and lean principles. We've looked at infrastructure, and we've looked at equipment. And now we're jumping into the topic of tools. So some motivations when you're choosing tools is, first of all, that you really want to use tools in a deeper sense, and you need them for your job, and you've got to think about the uses of each tool. And that's really important. From squeegees to pens and pencils, everything has a use. And when you're choosing a new tool to buy, of course, there's the cost benefit of and the resources that go into choosing a tool or using a tool. And it's real important. We can look at any tool, say a squeegee, for example. You might think, well, I could do that with some other tool. But when you start adding up, say, the $50 a squeegee cost, and then you think about the time it might save you and overall, and that money you can handle, you would pay for it in a very short amount of time, potentially, and being able to have that tool there and use that squeegee in an effective way also brings some meaning and happiness to your life, at least mine.
There are a couple key principles here that can be applied to every tool that we're going to talk about. It's important to have the right tool for the right job. It's important that the tool itself should be cleanable, as well as organized. So it could be organized in location or color coding or sorted with other like tools that you're using at the same times. It should be easily accessible, and you should have a good idea of when to replace it. When is the tool just too worn out and not serving its purpose anymore?
So, as Andy just noted, keeping tools organized can really make for an efficient operation, and also keep clean tools clean and keep used tools that need to be cleaned separate from ones that you're trying to keep clean. So it can take a lot of different forms. In this picture on the left, you can see a magnetic knife rack, for example, that's keeping harvest knives that have been cleaned up, dry, and out of the way. You can see also that like tools are stored with each other, and so it's always very clear where to find things. They're always in the same place, and if something's gone, you know it's being used. One way to think about this is having a place for everything and having everything in its place.
This is particularly important when you're running an operation with a big crew, or especially students coming in or interns rotating through. And there is the tragedy of the commons, and the way to combat that really is with this kind of order that you see on the left. If you work alone or have one long-term, couple long-term employees, you have more flexibility likely with where tools go, a little bit more wiggle room in that flexibility.
One simple solution to tool organization is having a harvest tote. So all the things that you need ready to go on a day to harvest. So whether you take the truck, a tractor, a side-by-side, or your feet, you've got the rubber bands, you've got your pruners, you've got your snippers, you've got your markers if you need to be marking things. All that is cleaned and ready to go on a daily basis, and you don't have to find yourself chasing down the pruners when you really need them.
But another tool that may not be completely obvious is record keeping. And we bring this up because it's incredibly important for being able to track profitability, for example, to understand the efficiency of your operation and where there's room for improvement, but also, of course, for produce safety. And the record keeping can take a lot of different forms, from very, very simple clipboards or notebooks to really highly sophisticated computer systems that track everything from soil amendments and seed all the way to sales. It really does come down to what's going to work best for you and what you're aligned with and what you can sustain. Mobile phones have become very common everywhere. They're just about in every pocket. They're oftentimes set to synchronize with the cloud, so your data is backed up automatically. When you're taking a picture, for example, it's date and time stamped automatically. So a picture can serve as a record for you. If you just take a picture of something that's happening, you automatically have a date and time of when that activity happened. Also highly mobile and portable, so they can really go with you anywhere. And the other key feature of mobile phones is, in addition to being a wonderful record-keeping device, they also help you stay in touch with crew and customers, and so you're able to multitask as needed, make sales while harvesting, for example. So mobile phones are an incredibly useful tool.
The next tool we'd like to mention is containers, harvest totes, lugs, cartons, bins, boxes. There's lots of different names for these containers and a lot of different options available. We've got a resource linked at the bottom, so if you go to this short link, go.uvm.edu/totes, it will take you to the blog post talking about all these different options with links and vendor information to actually source these. But there's a lot of things to take into consideration when selecting your harvest tote for your farm. What crops are you putting in it? Does it have a solid bottom or drain holes? How about vented sides for cooling purposes? Is it cleanable or is it durable? And can you easily label it? Light blocking and UV resistance is important for a lot of outdoor use. Do they stack or nest or both? That you can get them in different colors, and is the container ergonomic? I find this is a big one. I really like to find a container that is comfortable to hold, comfortable to walk around with, make sure that the handles don't have any sharp edges and things like that.
Cost benefit really comes into choosing containers too. When you think about not only how easy they are, but especially the range of movement, and having dedicated containers is incredibly important, which might mean more containers. So harvest containers might do a loop from the field and get to the pack house and get washed there, but stay outside. They never come in, whereas other containers are moving inside the pack out and cooler flip-top containers, and those stay where they are as well. And different colors keep you from having to search for things potentially. So time gets saved all over the place when you invest a little bit more money up front.
I would also say that there is a huge potential for quality improvement with the right container, particularly a storage container. Whether it's a flip-top lid to help keep humidity in storage and create a little microclimate. Growers see significant benefit from investing in the right container for the job. So yeah, it can be a significant expense, but there's really good feedback on having made that purchase for the right purpose. Scales are an important tool as well, because most of what is being sold needs to be measured out in a unit that someone can understand. And so oftentimes we're measuring pounds of something for market and getting that in a bag. So the common question that comes up is what should we be looking for in a scale? So of course the first thing is the size of the scale, the physical footprint of the scale, so it can accommodate the size of the package you're weighing out. Also, the range is part of that. The weighing range and accuracy over that range factors into the size as well. Ease of use is another thing. The one you see in this picture here has some added functionality for creating pricing, for doing pricing automatically based on the weight, and even some memory for storing particular products. So the per unit price can be automatically retrieved. That might be a little too much for some people, and just a simple readout is sufficient for your needs. We talked already a little bit about capacity and precision and accuracy of the scale, and then pricing abilities. For some people, it's important to be able to simply put something on a scale, tell the scale what it is, and pull up that price per pound, and have the price automatically determined. That you can take that to another level by having a label printer connected to it for doing individual labels based on individual weights and unit pricing. Another big factor is cost, of course. It's another investment to get into a scale that's going to do a lot of these additional features. Oftentimes, it's desirable for a scale to be useful in the wash pack shed, as well as at farmers market. And so having a scale that is not only portable and mobile, but also durable and is going to hold up to being moved around on a regular basis. That's one of the key complaints I've heard from growers is the scale they chose is great as long as it stays still. And when you start moving from place to place is when they tend to lose their ability. And then beyond label printing, you can get scales that have computer connectivity. So being able to connect up to your computer for things like pricing and labeling, but also for things like inventory management. That's really a third level of complexity. For some people, can make a lot of sense, but for many, it's another maintenance or complexity item that's just a little too much.
One additional thing is Andy was talking a while back about the tote for harvest tools. This is a similar kind of setup where you really shouldn't be spending much time setting up and finding the right tools to do a labeling, weigh label, pack out kind of thing. So everything right at your fingertips. If you can afford the 2x2 footprint, a little stainless table with the scale set up and everything you need right there, you wheel it out when you need it. It gets tucked away when you don't. Or if you're going to market a dedicated tote for the scale and all the other equipment, it's always where you need it. You know exactly where, and it's at your fingertips.
Yeah, that's a great point, huh? The other really nice, convenient, and efficient feature would be if you are keeping inventory and keeping records, having that record keeping system right at hand as you're weighing. And we do have a good picture of an example of this where an iPad is used for inventory management, and it's right by the weighing station. So as each bag is weighed, or each container full of bags is closed and put in storage, it gets entered into inventory right there and then.
I'm a big fan of magnetic knife holders. I have them at home and in my shop, and yeah, they work real well. One issue is things kind of need to be clean and dry before sticking them up so that the water doesn't sort of accumulate on the magnet. But in general, it's a great way to keep things at your fingertips. You can count them really easily, and you always know where they are.
One thing to note on any of these hangars or places where we keep tools is being aware of the environment around them, not only the walls behind them or next to them, but also what's above. And I have in mind an example that was shared with me recently of a really nice installation of a magnetic knife holder that happened to be right under a cold water line where condensate was dripping right on all the knives. So it's not necessarily something you always think of right off the bat when thinking of where to put things, but look around and up and down and think about, is this the best location, and is it going to keep these tools clean and dry?
Speaking of keeping things clean and dry, a good example of that is here in this pack shed, they have metal walls, which are painted metal, easily cleanable. And the great thing about that is that they can use magnets to hang a ton of things. So these are magnetic clips, and they use them to dry their gloves and these sleeves that they use in washing and packing. So that's an example that they can be hung up and be separated from one person's to the next and hang to dry. Here's an example of a food hoe. It's made of plastic and used in the food industry, but it would also work great in a barrel washer. Instead of that old, rusty, worn out garden hoe, you could actually have a dedicated food hoe that is both easy to clean as well as it's not gonna cut up your produce as well. So it's easy to clean, it's large, and it's a dedicated tool that doesn't spread contamination.
So wheels were invented right 2,000 years ago. They're a great idea if you haven't tried them. And having a smooth floor is in the wash pack, a durable floor, not only makes it easier to clean, but also allows for real easy use of wheels. Ergonomically, there are all sorts of reasons to use wheels. They're not that expensive. A decent set of 4 will maybe run you in the $60 range. They're going to help you help save your back over time and muscles. Good quality wheels are essential, and just this easing mobility of things and moving things quickly. You're in the flow. The quality of your experience is much smoother. And of course, I'm speaking metaphorically as well as literally. Loading, unloading, and relocating product from one place to another, they're all sorts of things. You know, we got to clean under that thing. How moving it in 30 seconds as opposed to, or I have 10 seconds as opposed to a couple minutes. Multi-use dollies, really helpful and important. We have great examples of people using tote dollies. So they're different totes can get moved around when they need to get cleaned. You just set them, you don't have to move to stack them up, and then you wheel them out of the way to dry. So definitely, when in doubt, think about wheels and potentially try them out or get some.
There's a couple of things that I'd like to just highlight or point out here from these photos, and that's that these simple carts, they may be designed to fit one tote very specifically, but as you can see, it's a wide enough platform that you can use them for multiple uses. So whether it be a bulb crate or a tomato flat or a flip top tote, you can use that dolly for multiple things. Another one is I wanted to emphasize like having tables on wheels, locking wheels so they don't roll around when you're there working on it. But that keeps the space flexible. It allows you to change up tasks or reorient things to be more efficient and save you time from turning around and spinning things around. You can really position the table and the things around you right where you need it. And like Hans mentioned, cleaning under and around it. If your table's not on wheels, you're probably never going to move it. And just kind of running the broom underneath the center of it a little bit leaves a lot of dust bunnies and critters in the corners that are hard to reach and frankly don't get cleaned very often because it takes all that extra work. So having stuff on wheels, you can see in the lower left corner here, the table's on wheels, all the totes and dollies are on wheels. You can see the cart in the background, that cabinet is even on wheels. So that entire floor can be hosed down, squeegee dry, and kept very clean. There's nothing hiding in the corners underneath things because things can be moved out of the way with ease.
There are a lot of needs for water in wash pack area and post-harvest in general, and how we get water. How do we get water to where we need it? Hoses are a very common option because they provide a lot of flexibility for moving the water source around to wherever you need it. They can be hung up when you're done or coiled up. However, it can be really helpful to have multiple hose drops or spigots. And so this is something we often get into with growers when they're planning a new wash pack shed. And one of the very first questions we ask is, what's your water source and how are you going to get it to the building, and what's it look like once it's in the building? So thinking about more than one faucet, if you will, or more than one spigot can be really helpful, both for the number of uses that can be, the number of places where water can be used at one time, but also just to make things easy for access and to avoid trip hazards and of hoses running along the ground. So to that point, one of the key things we want to talk about with hoses is ways of keeping them off the ground for a lot of reasons. One is just personal safety, avoiding trip hazards. The other is produce safety. So, keeping, oftentimes this hose will be what's providing water to tanks or bins that are being used as food contact surfaces for washing produce. So keeping our hoses clean is really important from that perspective. So how to keep hoses off the ground? You can make a pretty simple trolley like the one shown here with a green hose sort of in the center of this slide. This is from a greenhouse where somebody used just sections of PVC pipe to support the hose, and then those are attached to pulleys like you would see on a dog run or something like that. So pretty simple, and then those pulleys are run through a piece of cable. Pretty simple do-it-yourself approach. You can buy these as kits as well. The other option to consider is a hose reel. And so there's two examples given here. One is the red one from Hane, and the other is a black one from Equip. And in both cases, they provide for a very convenient way of getting hose up and out of the way when you don't need it, but having it readily available when you do need it. These reels have a ratchet mechanism built in, so as you pull the hose out, it's winding a spring, and then you, just like most of these types of systems, you just pull down quickly to have it then reel back up and out of your way. Lots of different types of nozzles too that can be used for the various purposes. Generally speaking, in the post-harvest environment, we're trying to avoid high pressure, high velocity sprays, trying to keep the water velocity down to avoid atomization of the water and any pathogens that might be carried along for the ride. The other last point I want to make on hoses and water coming into wash packs in general is thinking about the routing of the water lines, particularly for spaces where we're not doing anything with air conditioning or dehumidification, setting outside pack sheds or just more maybe seasonal use. That cold water line, bringing cold water into, bringing well water or other water sources into your wash pack is going to get cold, and it's going to condense the moisture out of the air, and that condensate can become a problem from a produce safety perspective. It certainly is a red flag, if you will, for an inspection if there's condensation. So the idea is route your water lines sort of toward the perimeter of your space, maybe even down low, so any dripping that does occur is dripping below where any food contact surfaces are. Certainly, if you are routing water into a building or around a wash pack area, avoid running it over places where you will have food contact surfaces. And if you already have a situation where you have plumbing's already in and you're locked into a certain layout, you can certainly put a gutter up of some sort, either a split section of PVC pipe or an actual gutter to collect any condensate, avoid it from coming in contact with that food contact surface.
Two more things I'd like to point out about hoses is one is hose quality. Choosing a high quality EPDM rubber hose is going to stay flexible, whether it's hot or cold, used with hot water or cold water. It resists kinking. And pay attention to what kind of fitting is on the end. The higher end hoses often have a stronger metal fitting on the end, so if it does get stepped on or driven over, it's going to hold up better. So spending the money on a high-end hose makes sense for farm usage. That way you don't find yourself replacing it because it splits and dries and cracks and gets stiff that a cheap hose might fail on you. Another upgrade you could do is spend the $10-15 on quick connect couplings, so you can quickly change from maybe a watering wand to a spray nozzle to rinse things out. So depending on the use of the hose and the location, like example in a greenhouse, it makes sense to have multiple different heads that you can easily switch over that are a leak-free connection, and they also provide a swivel joint too, so it makes it even easier to use. Now, if you're in a wash pack zone and that hose is only for washing things, then maybe you can get away with leaving one head on there. But having quick connect fittings is a nice little efficiency upgrade.
Back to the squeegee. I'm a big fan of squeegees. I like them for windows. I even have a song about squeegees, but I won't sing it. And I find them pretty pleasing tools in general. Really for moving water, and of course, water. There's going to be water everywhere in a wash pack, and setting up to have a smooth floor, putting in the extra effort to get concrete smooth, and invest in good squeegee is worth its weight in gold. Drying is really important from a produce safety perspective, as well as just keeping humidity down in that space. But there are plenty of pathogens that do well and can survive for long periods of time in colder, cool, wet environments, including listeria. And so the squeegee really brings that water level down. It can double, triple drying times easily, and it can decrease the potential of slipping or falling.
One more thing to note here is I remembered I have a little hack to cleaning this drain here on the floor. and you can see a little orange thing. So between the holes, I installed a zip tie into a little loop. And all that is a finger loop, so I don't need a screwdriver or a tool in order to take off that grate and clean out that bell trap. All you can do is just hook your finger on that zip tie to lift up the grate, and then when not in use, the zip tie falls flat flush with the floor. So a zip tie or a little piece of metal wire would probably work just fine, and is a little tip for toolless maintenance.
Brilliant.
So we talked about trench drains earlier when we talked about buildings, and we mentioned the importance of being able to clean those drains really well and easily. And here what we're showing is the use of a square shovel for cleaning out the trench drain, and buckets, of course, ubiquitous buckets, which help us get rid of any number of things and move them from one place to another. It's important in this case to know that the bucket you're going into is, of course, large enough to accept the shovel, so that you're not making more cleanup necessary when in trying to clean out the drain.
It's also important to, like, this is an example, to have color coordinated or dedicated buckets, so that these are cull buckets and they are never going to be harvest buckets. Same with that shovel. It's important to keep this shovel near the drain, so it's, because obviously this one's designed to fit it, or this shovel fits the drain specifically, so it would be good to not lose that elsewhere on the farm, and that way it's there when you need it to clean the drain. And that this drain slop is not being spread someplace else, and it's dedicated to that task to keep things clean and organized. So tools that you probably won't use regularly in the pack shed are mechanics tools, wrenches, screwdrivers, etc. But you should probably have some on the farm. They should be kept separate from post-harvest activities, so that way they're not getting dirty and mixed in, or you're not tempted to bring another project into your wash pack space. But they should be readily available so they can be used when something needs to be fixed. And a good example of this is maybe you have a to-go kit. Maybe it's a separate toolbox or a separate socket set that is just ready to go, and you can throw it in the tractor or your wheelbarrow and take it to the project, and you aren't looking for those sockets. And then there's an example where there may be specialty tools that you need, something that is only used for that one task. Maybe it's a modified screwdriver or a custom wrench for a particular piece of equipment. And that's where it might make sense to label it and leave that next to its intended use. So cleaning tools, there are a variety of cleaning tools available. And a couple things to consider is, what is that tool being used for? And what tool should you use for the thing you're cleaning? So it makes sense to use the right tool for the right job. Consider color coding. Whether you're using something to clean the floors, should probably be a different tool than something that you're using to clean off the countertops. So that's another example where you could use color coordinating to separate and individualize tools for specific uses. Tools should be easily accessible, and an important thing to note is when to replace them. When is a tool going to wear out and be less effective? So that's something to keep in mind, is that brush does have a lifespan and it will need to be replaced at some point, so keeping an eye on that so it stays an effective tool and accomplishes the task that it's designed to do.
Let's focus on easily accessible for a second. It really amazes me again and again how powerful having the right tool at the right place, exactly where you need it and set up there, how powerful that is for making the task happen. Whether it is the brush, which is hanging right in the right spot with the detergent next to it, or it's a setup of tools hanging in the right place where you need them. All this stuff is going to make these things happen almost more so than actually having the tool.
Now, one thing that is almost hard to call a tool, but I think it's important to touch upon, are heaters. And heaters are an accessory to your wash pack space that could really make it comfortable and make it more doable to get the job done, especially in the shoulder seasons. Heaters also help dry out the space. So whether that be saving you from slipping, removing pathogens that are growing in wet locations, and including protecting your building, getting out that humidity is really important and drying things out, and heaters can help with that. This is a different type of heater. It's called a mini split heat pump. It uses electricity and is rather energy efficient as far as heat or air conditioning goes. And so the main unit is outside the building, and then this is inside and it hangs on the wall. So it's a great dehumidifier. As I said, it's a heater as well as an air conditioner.
Thermostats are really important, obviously, for controlling temperature in a variety of applications. In wash pack, we're primarily using them for storage spaces. And the way to think about a thermostat is it's just a switch. It's a switch that turns on or off based on temperature that it measures. We have a whole resource on the website that walks through different features of thermostats to look for. And that's at that short link listed here. The key features that we really encourage people to consider are look for a digital thermostat. The reason being it actually shows you the temperature that you've set, and you can adjust it in very clear increments of 1 degree usually, and some even are more precise than that. Look for something that has a low differential, and that's the difference between when it's on and when it's off, allowing you more precise control over what you're trying to control. A remote probe. And so the little gray wire coming off of the left side of the thermostat in the upper left corner, for example, that's the probe, and that's what's measuring temperature. The nice thing about a remote probe is it lets you measure the temperature in one place and have your control unit in another place. So for example, a cooler, you could have this display control unit on the outside of the cooler and have it measuring inside. You can also extend these probes, in some cases up to 800 feet, which can be really helpful. Keeping all of your controls in one place, label them up so you can in one glance know what everything is set to and what everything is actually measuring. Thermostats differ a little bit on the full load amperage, so how much current they can switch on and off. And this can be important depending on what you're trying to run. A small little fan is one thing, a large compressor for a refrigeration system is another. And so they do differ on that feature, and it's really important to make sure you know what you're getting into. Worst case, it means you have to run it with a separate relay that can handle that load. Thermostats can be used for cooling and heating, and as a result of cooling and heating, can be used for humidification and dehumidification. The other thing that can be helpful is either wiring a thermostat up with plugs or buying them with a plug. And this can be particularly helpful for when you're trying to control a heated storage space, for example, for winter squash or sweet potatoes, where you're concerned about it getting too cold. Just a little simple little space heater hooked up to a thermostat wired with plugs can really take care of that challenge very easily. CoolBots are a super quick and relatively inexpensive way of getting a refrigerated space for storage. This system takes a window air conditioning unit and tricks it into running a little bit longer and a little bit colder than it normally would. Instead of making 60-degree air in a room, you can get down to 34 degrees, 35 degrees with a CoolBot. More information at the link listed here. But generally speaking, the upside of a CoolBot is there's a low initial cost. It's really the cost of this controller, which is generally about $300. It's the cost of a window air conditioning unit, and you need to build an insulated box or buy panels to do that. Easy to retrofit into an existing space with relatively basic construction. This is really a DIY system. It's something just about anybody can install and maintain. Oftentimes these are being put into framed rooms that have been insulated by the user. On the downside, CoolBots can be slow to pull down temperature, that is to remove field heat, and also slow to recover from rises in temperature, perhaps happening as a result of the door opening too frequently. The other downside is it doesn't get down much below 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Definitely does not get down to freezing. One of the things a CoolBot controller does is actually monitor the fins of the air conditioning unit to see if they have any frost on them and then run a defrost cycle. So CoolBots can be a super quick, easy, and relatively inexpensive way of getting refrigeration on the farm. We've talked about a lot of neat ways of spending money, and a lot of them are electronic and maybe complicated and need maintenance. I think one of the things to remember, especially with monitoring and record keeping and the like, is simple works too. And this is just a simple thermometer that's hung on a wall. There's no electronics to this thing. It's got a section there that's been taped with a label that shows what is the acceptable range of temperature in this particular room. It's got it labeled above it as well in very clear lettering. So anybody walking through this room could tell quickly whether there was an issue or not, and report it to whoever needs to know. So thinking about those simple, really foolproof ways of communicating what's desired and what the current conditions are.
So these tools for productivity just kind of highlight several different examples that really improve the workspaces at hand. So whether it be putting wheels on a pallet to make a large dolly to move around a whole bunch of bins at once, or implementing a large valve on the bottom of your tank so you can quickly drain out your greens wash line. That makes it really easy. The top center here is a photo of a DIY drying rack. So a couple box fans on one end, and it allows a space for these containers to dry out after being washed and cleaned. On the right is just a photo of a barrel washer inside up on a couple sawhorses for a quick and easy setup. And whiteboards, that's something else we didn't mention, but is a super productive tool in the pack shed and can be used for planning and organizing both harvest, what needs to be harvested, what is harvested, what needs to be washed, and where does it need to be packed out to go to. Another example on the bottom right is a French cleat style of organization, comes out of the woodworking world. And this allows, it's a rail where the board sits into a groove, and you can move that all the way around the room because that rail goes all the way around the room. So whether you're hanging your tools, hanging your rain jackets, or moving a shelf, it can be placed anywhere around the perimeter of this room. So a lot of little things like that can go a long ways for productivity. And to take it back to the key principles that we started with, having the right tool for the right job, and valuing the time and money that these tools can save you really make a well-rounded improvement to your farm.
So this whole section, we've really been focused on productivity. And of course, these tools are, make us effective at doing lots of things we can't do with our hands alone. And the tools don't always seem like tools, right? The whiteboard is a tool, shelves are tools. These things put our brain to use to think about how do we make this space work better. And a lot of them are do it yourself. And they engage us with the world around us to increase our productivity. And not only is this make things more efficient and make our farm more profitable, but it also really improves the quality of life in general and the sanity. When things are organized, they have places, we can work without distraction. By and large, we're happier and more productive.
Thanks for watching this session of project planning for post-harvest efficiency, profitability, and food safety. We hope you're getting a lot out of it and learning things that you can apply to your farm. If you did learn something and do implement something on your farm, let us know. Or if you have a suggestion or a comment of something you've done, we'd love to hear it. So go ahead and comment below or send us an email at producesafety@uvm.edu. Thanks for watching, and I hope you watch the next video.